Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Michael, and we've got an exciting episode for today. Today, we connect with someone who's actually a listener, but they're more than just that, and they ended up randomly being kind of a neighbor to me, but Donnie Dust. If you don't know Donnie, check out his socials and give him a follow. I've been following him for a long time because the guy is super interesting, but Donnie is a wilderness survival expert, professional tracker, former military veteran. He's known for his unique skill set in primitive survival techniques, often like teaching people how to live off the land using ancient methods. Donnie also, his work has been featured on multiple shows, and he's really passionate about connecting people with nature in a way that's both practical and deeply rooted in tradition. So check him out on Alone, check him out on First Man Out, check him out on his YouTube channel, but please do give Donnie a follow. This episode is a really good one. So let's just jump into this thing. Let's let Donnie tell you some of his stories. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. I do appreciate you. All right, Donnie, welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast, man. How are you?
I'm doing exceptional. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it greatly.
Yeah, man, I'm so excited to have you here. You followed me on Instagram, and I was like, no way, what's this guy doing following me? Because like I've been a big fan of yours for a long time. Like I said before we started recording, like your videos were like, people like, can you make this? You're like, of course I can make that. Yeah, like you just do awesome stuff. You're a really entertaining guy, and I'm honored to have you here. So thank you, man. I really do appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you greatly. I mean, like we were discussing, I'm horrible at the social media. So when I listen to podcasts and I hear different things, especially when I'm flint napping or getting ready to drive somewhere, and then I never really put two and two together. I'll follow them on, the podcast, Spotify, or whatever the case may be. And then I'm like, well, I should probably also go hit them up on Instagram as well and follow them. And so that was my fault. And ironically, we live probably less than 10 minutes from one another.
Yeah, I could probably walk to your house in 15 minutes. So that is absolutely insane. But let's do this, Donnie. I want you to introduce yourself, but be as thorough or not as you want. But you are an impressive person, man. I mean, you're an author. You're a Marine.
Yeah.
You do film and movie stuff. I know you say you don't do social media, but I found you on social media, so I assumed you were a little bit of an influencer. You probably don't like that title, but why don't you introduce yourself? Because I wouldn't even know where to start, because you do have an impressive background, man. So go ahead.
Oh, right on. Well, I appreciate it. My name is Donnie Dust. That is my name. It's not a stage name or anything to that extent. I live in Lafayette, Colorado, and United States Marine Corps veteran. I did 12 years in the Corps. Served time as a infantry machine gunner, and then I was a counterintelligence, human intelligence agent. Did a lot of deployments to combat zones, all around the world where there is sort of kind of unique situations that required some counterintelligence work. I could find myself there. And after about 12 years in the Corps, it was just time to get out. I had 2 young sons, and I wanted to be, present as a father, and really kind of guide them into whatever kind of pursuits they wanted to explore or kind of choose on their own happenings. And after getting out of the Corps, I worked a little bit of government contracts, and that's kind of a unique world, and it really just kind of brought me back into that, that war fighting phase. So I decided to kind of pursue a lifelong passion of mine, which was kind of the primitive skills of survival, the remote living and primitive hunting that I kind of did a lot as in my youth, and then learned quite a bit while I was in the Corps. But I wanted to do that full time. And it's hard for folks to do that, to step away from, that guaranteed paycheck and health insurance and all those things. But I think that was the Marine in me saying, all right, you got this, you got to buckle down and make it happen. And from that time, I've written a couple different books. I've gone on social media, and that was kind of a slow phase in my evolution to where I'm at today. I never really relied on, social media to promote, a business or opportunities. And I kind of started teaching skills, guiding some hunts, really by sitting at a parking lot, throwing out a large bison hide or a couple mule deer hides, doing some friction fires, and kind of using my presence as my biggest advertisement. And that's where I could book people on kind of remote living experiences. And, when we got into that kind of hunting world, I was able to kind of add some of that expertise there as well. And from that time, I've been learning social media and kind of understood the importance of it and how it can present new opportunities. And it's it's been pretty awesome, and all through this time, I've been a hunter, and I'm kind of I consider myself. I don't want to put myself in a category because I think too many hunters do that in a lot of different landscapes. You're a bow hunter, rifle hunter, primitive hunter. I am a hunter, and within that, I kind of live by the philosophy of honoring the hunt, and hunting is about resources for me and for my family. That is,
That's
the
awesome.
hides you see behind me, the meat, the sinew, the tendons, the intestines, the heart, liver, lungs, all of those things can be consumed. All of the, antlers and things that come from an animal, including its bones, are all tools that I can use in the pursuits of, primitive living, flint knapping, building bows, building everything and anything. So hunting for me is kind of my Home Depot, King
Yeah,
Supers,
that's
and
cool, man.
like
I like the way you
my
think of that.
entertainment.
I
Yeah,
do I
it's
do label
and
myself. I'm a hunter of opportunity because I suck so bad
yeah,
at all of it. I will just go as long as I have a chance, like I'm happy. Whether it's rifle, gun,
absolutely.
whatever. I like you just want to kind of harvest the animal and do the best I can.
Yeah.
And I'm learning it. I don't have the skills that you have by any means, but I love the attitude that you bring to it, man. That's beautiful.
I appreciate it. And I think what people strive for in the hunting community is a ground truth. And that ground truth is something that they obtain through successes and failures because you learn from both. And I do believe that whether you're a 10-year hunter, 5-year, or 1-year, individual looking to get into hunting, you learn from those experiences, and that is your ground truth. And you always kind of rely on that. So, I mean, it even goes, this Sunday I'm going out. I've taken a couple geese this year with a shotgun, waterfowl hunting,
Hmm.
taken plenty of ducks. But for me, it's I love goose meat, and I also need the wings for fletchings. So
Okay.
it's finding those resources where I can kind of continuously fuel my adventures and my endeavors. And
Yeah.
hunting is it's extremely important for me and my family. So,
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. And there's so many geese around here. I understand why you've
oh
taken a few.
gosh,
There's so many
oh,
geese
yeah.
around here.
So good, so delicious. Do you
Yeah.
like geese?
I've
They,
only, so again, I'm a new hunter. I've only been goose hunting
yeah.
one time. Went down in
Okay.
Texas to this area kind of west of Houston that's supposedly just known for just amazing goose hunting. Get down
Yeah.
there. It's the middle of the night. We're setting up our spread, and I could
Yeah.
hear geese like I've never heard geese in my life. It was just this like overwhelming noise, and I'm like, that's just honking. That is
Yeah.
insane. And I've never been more excited for the sun to rise because I was like, I'm going to see a goose tornado. It's going to be the
Oh
best
yeah.
hunt of my life. Turns out all the sandhill cranes spooked them all from our area. We had like 15 sandhill cranes above us, and you could see in the distance, like literally blocking out the sky, blocking out the skyline,
Yeah.
geese everywhere around us. But above us, nothing. Just absolutely
No
nothing. So
kidding.
we shot, I
Oh
want to
man.
say 3 geese.
Right on.
I took one home. I ate it. It was delicious, but I don't think I did
Hell
a
yeah.
great job cooking it. I was just excited to have the one. But it was such a funny experience just because I was just like so hyped and there were just so many
Yeah.
animals. But it's hunting, right? You can't
Yeah,
control that.
it's one of those things. Yeah, you don't get that many opportunities,
Yeah.
when you see like, a flock of geese flying over and there's 100, 200, and there's multiple wedges flying. You kind of get really excited. And I think, for me, I love goose meat. My boys have grown up eating goose meat, but I've discovered this new recipe where you actually take your goose breasts, put them in your crock pot, pour a full pot of black coffee, like
Okay.
original black coffee, and you slow cook it in that all day, and it comes apart just like a pulled pork, like a pot roast,
Oh
and
my goodness.
it is amazing. It's
No
absolutely, you
other
throw
seasonings,
onions.
salt, pepper, anything else? No?
Yeah, I mean, you could throw some stuff there. I mean, I'll put onions in there, some salt and pepper,
Okay.
but when you pull it out, it just shreds, and it's top notch. Because before it was always like, burritos or tacos where you're
Yeah.
covering it with just like hot seasonings. No, just black coffee, a little bit of onion, salt, pepper, low and slow,
That's
and
interesting.
it's top notch.
Well, next
It's
time I
top
get a
notch,
goose,
man.
man, that's gonna be
Yeah.
my go-to recipe. So cool. Well,
Well,
this
maybe
isn't
we
a
can jump
cooking
out
show,
on
Donnie. This isn't a cooking show, all right? So cut that out. Let's.
All right.
Why don't you tell us how you got those geese? Let's start. No, I'm just kidding. Well, but let's get to it, man. Why don't you set the stage?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where do you want to take us, man? I would love. I'm
So,
excited to hear some stories.
yeah. So I think for this first story, we're actually going to move out of the country and we're going to head to the Amazon jungle.
No,
Um,
cool.
yeah. So, and this is kind of like a little bit different, probably than what most people hear, as well as some of their own personal experiences. But about 2 years ago, I had an opportunity to go down into the Amazon jungle and race another man by the name of Ed Stafford, who's from the UK, across the Amazon jungle with just a machete.
No
And
way. That is so
yeah,
cool. All right.
yeah, it's a pretty awesome experience. But the whole objective was for him and I to race, taking different paths, no maps, no compass, no water bottles, no fire, just a machete. And we were to jump into the Amazon River off a barge, swim across the river, and then just hit land, and then look for different indicators of elevation. And then from that elevation, look for like downwater, different ravines and draws and little gullies that would lead us to this river called the Rio Negro. And that was our kind of exfil. And the first person that could get there was the first man out, and they kind of won this race.
Okay. So, real quick, what is the estimated like bird flies distance from one of these rivers to the other? Hey, hunters. Have you ever had one of those stories, the ones that you didn't want to tell, the ones that end in failure? Yeah, I've been there. Actually, you know what? The culprit for me usually is bad optics, or worse, lack of using my optics at all. Picture this. I spot a trophy buck, or an antelope, or an elk, whatever it may be. My heart is racing, but the blurry view, or I just can't quite identify exactly what I'm looking at, it has me second guessing. Well, that's where Vortex Optics comes in. With crystal clear glass and rugged durability, Vortex gives you the confidence to take the shot. Don't let poor optics ruin your story. Make every moment count. Upgrade to Vortex and turn your hunting tales into triumphs. Visit vortexoptics.com today.
So we're probably looking over 100 plus miles
Whew.
for
Okay.
this leg between uh, between the Amazon and the Rio Negro. But with that, I had never been to the Amazon jungle. Ed had an advantage where he had walked the entire length of South America. It took him 2 years to do it, but he had kind of a ground truth there.
Yeah. Okay.
So I've spent some time in jungles, but never the Amazon. So I was up for the challenge. And I knew when we were going out there, there was going to require kind of different knowledge, skills, and abilities to ultimately get stuff done. So one of the things that you would think in the jungle like that, there are lots of food opportunities, and there are, but a lot of them come in the form of insects or snakes. And I ate my handful of grubs and different larvae and was drinking from water vines. But one of the things that I needed was a legitimate element of protein. I needed food, and
Yeah.
you can catch piranha, and you could probably try to locate a caiman. But with all those things, just like in any sort of hunting, there's certain risk reward sort of benefits. And for me, I was thinking, I need something that I can reach out and touch through the form of an atlatl or a bow, and be able to take that critter, if you will, and
Yeah.
be able to
Whatever
cook it
it
over
is.
fire,
Okay.
whatever it is. So while I was there, I learned a couple different plants. I got to spend some time with some locals, learning different plants. And one of the things that I was going to do was make a bow out of a tree called the mata mata. And the mata mata is a very unique tree where that tree will provide you the right type of bow wood. Its bark will also serve as your cordage. And then from the different palm species that are out there, there's hard tops to these palms that make pretty decent arrows. Maybe
Yeah.
like a 2.5, 3 foot arrow, fletchingless, but it will still puncture a hole, draw blood, lead to a bleed out, so on and so forth. And one of the things that I learned quickly, what was on the menu was electric eel. And from this,
Okay.
yeah. So I've never hunted electric eel, but being that we were there in the rainy season, a lot of the water had flooded up. And these electric eels are extremely, extremely powerful. So powerful that they can identify fruit trees, touch the base of the fruit tree if it's, in the water, shock it, it will drop those fruits and eat those fruits out of the water. So this
Wow.
thing
Okay.
really, really packs a punch.
That's amazing.
So yeah, I'll
This is
tell you what,
all
man.
news to me. You're blowing my mind.
All
Keep
right,
going, Donnie.
no worries. Um, So as I'm traveling throughout the jungle, I'm sleeping in a variety of shelters up off the ground. I'm avoiding bullet ants and poison dart frogs, and it seems like something out of a movie, and it absolutely was in my mind. But I was having a blast, and eventually I got to this section where I was able to find some water, and I had to craft a boat. And my biggest concern was piranhas, caimans, and electric eels. But prior to getting there, I was like, you got to make this bow. You got to get it dialed in. You got to be able to take like a 10, 15-yard shot, maybe something in a tree or something in the water. But this is going to be your means of getting food. And having a history of bow making, I had a lot of confidence being able to make this bow with just a machete. So I find my right mata mata tree. I craft my bow, my bowstring. I get a couple of arrows that are fletchingless, just long, heavier in the front. That tapered out end almost acts like a tail in a fletching. And 10, 12 yards. I was pretty dialed in.
Okay.
So I get to this low water, and the easiest way to navigate this water is actually building a boat or a raft of some sort, and then moving from flooded water to kind of dry land, flooded water to dry land. So I built this raft out of a variety of different types of woods, built a paddle, and started paddling through. And after a full day of paddling on this water, I'm just completely tuckered out. And it's time to make a shelter because you can't sleep on the ground in the Amazon. You have to get up off the ground because it's a completely different sort of environment. So I build this elevated shelter. I get a fire going. And as I'm doing this, my fire's rocking and rolling. I start to see these ripples in the water. And when I was learning from the locals, they said sometimes the ripples are caimans because they're just kind of moving high up in the water. Sometimes it can be an eel, it can be a school of piranha, but you have to be careful when you're approaching. And in my mind, I'm going back to all those like hunting fundamentals of like playing the wind and kind of masking my movements from tree to tree. And as I'm doing this, I'm like, walking up to this water's edge, not really knowing what's in this dark, murky, like black water. But when I get there, I realize that the water is mud leading up to the edge. So I have to kind of take a back step to where I can get to a somewhat dry portion to see actually what this is, in the event that it was an electric eel. So I move to this dry land. I jump up onto this kind of like down tree. And lo and behold, there's this like 6 foot electric eel that's probably 4 or 5 inches in diameter, just slowly moving through
Jeez.
the water. And like most, hunters, you always want to be prepared. So I had my bow, I had my arrows, and as I'm looking at this eel, I'm thinking to myself, if I shoot this eel, I have to then get in the water with blood in the water, and these eels will still kick out a charge, and that can be pretty darn dangerous. So, as I'm precariously maneuvering through elevated logs, I'm able to get a shot on this electric eel with my bow. It's probably like, I don't know, maybe, 6, 7 feet away. And when I shot, my first arrow missed. And I was like, oh my God, this is not good. I need some food. So luckily, I had another arrow, drew it out, and I plugged him right in the back of the head. And when this thing got hit, it started to kick and just go absolutely crazy in the water. And eventually, it died. Then it came the challenge of me retrieving this eel from the water, and it was jabbing it with sticks, trying to lift it out, making sure that there was nothing conducting any electricity because they can still kind of have that charge.
Yeah. How do you know how long they can hold that charge after they expire?
I believe like once their heart stops, they have probably like another 30, 45 seconds where that charge is still kind of radiating to the muscles.
Okay.
It decreases in its volatility, but it's still kind of there, if you will.
God, just the idea
But
of an animal that generates electricity is
I know
it's like outer space. It doesn't make sense to me. Like
it
this
doesn't.
is insane. But okay, keep going.
Yeah. So eventually I'm able to get this eel out of the water and I'm able to pull it up on this stick. And when I finally pulled it up out of the water, I swear it got like 3 feet longer. It was just this monster. When I'm not exaggerating. Like I was able to hold chunks of meat in my hand. So we've all pulled out back straps of, elk or mule deer, whatever the case may be. And they're pretty girthy and they're pretty thick. I would say, to give you a visual, if you took 4 back straps from an elk and put them all together, that's how thick this electric eel was. Bone
No
white meat,
way.
one spine right down the entire thing. And I brought it over the fire, started chopping up with my machete, stuck it on a skewer and just roasted it over this fire. Ate it like probably at least 4 or 5 pounds of electric eel, tried to dry some out,
How'd that
stuck some
work?
in my little uh it wasn't the best because it's really humid there, and I was kind of in this race,
Okay.
so I just gorged as much as I could that day. stuck some over the coal, so we just kind of keep kind of roasting throughout the night. Ate some more in the morning, and then took off the the next morning on my
Yeah.
raft again. But
Gosh.
it was one of those things where, even though this was kind of a unique opportunity where something presented itself in the form of food, um, you know, it's different than some of the conventional hunting that we might experience
Yeah.
these days. So those fundamentals still remain, like how do I retrieve my animal? What's the best way to process it? All those sort of factors. But it was a completely different world and completely new to me. But I was still able to kind of rely on some of the things that I knew. Like, all right, you've eaten plenty of snakes, you've eaten
Yeah.
plenty of things. Let's break this animal down. It probably has a gut cavity, probably has an anus. You're going to have to clean these things out. Let's remove its head. And if it's one giant backstrap, swimming in the water, it's a meal. And
Yeah.
it was absolutely delicious.
That's
Absolutely
yeah.
delicious.
So a couple questions. Are there
Yeah,
any
far away.
regulations in that area, or is it just kind of like they dropped you off and they're like, just stay alive, kill whatever you want? Are you ready to elevate your archery game? Summit Bowstrings delivers premium strings for all archers, crafted with bloodline fiber and BCY material stretched for unmatched consistency. Choose from 3 series: Hunter, Competition, and Summit. Each string is built bison tough with unique techniques for extreme durability and performance, ideal for both seasoned hunters and target archers. Experienced strings designed to handle any challenge. Visit summitbowstrings.com and use HSP10 for a 10% discount.
Yeah, as far as I know, there were no regulations. I mean, we weren't on anyone's property. It was just the
Okay.
Amazon jungle.
Yeah.
So, catching piranha, I do believe the caimans might have a harvest season,
Okay.
but it wasn't anything that we had to consider. It was whatever presents itself, you can totally consume. So
Okay. Okay.
for me, that was it.
Yeah. So that was, I assume, your first big meal was that eel, or am I placing it kind of in the wrong spot in the timeline?
Yeah,
How many
that was
days?
really the
Yeah.
only meal that I had. I mean, there was grubs and like Brazil nuts and
Okay.
different fruits you can come across, but it's just like anyone. Like some people need their peak refuels or their
Yeah.
harvest right freeze dried foods. I needed, fuel to really energize my body after, hiking and trekking and building a boat and then paddling this boat and then having to, know I'm going to have to do a long swim once I get into the Rio Negro. Um, it's kind of one of those unique adventures where food
Yeah.
was absolutely a priority, and I enjoyed it because it allowed me to kind of stick to my fundamentals when it comes to hunting, and it was I mean, yeah,
Okay.
definitely
Cool.
a unique place.
That's
Yeah,
amazing. So who won?
I did.
Yeah, the boy.
I did.
I
Yeah,
was hoping
yeah,
that was the answer.
yeah.
How do you,
It
how
was good.
much
It was a good adventure.
how far ahead were you of? And I forgot his name already. I'm sorry, but how far? Uh,
Ed.
yeah. How many days or hours or minutes did you finish before him?
So I finished several hours before him, and I think my
Oh, it's
biggest
close.
advantage was, yeah, he's not the best swimmer.
Okay.
So I got a huge leg as soon as we jumped off the barge. And there was a lot of times where you could go overland, you're along a water's edge, or you could swim across. And I think that was the, amphibious marine being in me. If I saw, 100, 200 meter sort of swim, I'm like, I'm in the water.
Yeah.
And if there is a caiman in there or piranha, hopefully things will work out in my advantage. But I would just, I just jumped in the water and swam, machete at the hand, just going just in case. But I think that really paid off and made up
Okay.
some time and was able to come out on top.
That's so cool. Okay. I have to assume you guys did not film this. It seems a little too intense to like. So I guess who was hosting it? Like it's a race, right? So is it just a
Yeah.
gentleman's handshake, or like what is the organization that
No,
put this all together?
this was part of a TV program, and Ed has raced people in various
Okay.
places, but this was like his big challenge, his big race. The reason being is, I mean, he spent 2 years in the Amazon, walking from the north of Amazon all the way down to the south. So this was kind of like his coming home
Yeah.
sort of thing. So there was a film crew there, so people can actually see all of this in the flesh and in the action.
No way.
It's called
Okay.
First Man Out. But I mean, there was times where we would lose them when you're on a boat and paddling, when you're running through the jungle, so they would kind of leapfrog in different areas, try to catch you and see you. But we were on two different routes, and the only time I saw Ed was once we swam across the Amazon when we jumped off the barge, and then when we got on the Rio Negro, I could see him way back on his boat. He built a boat or a little raft as well, and mine was more like a stand up paddle board sort
Okay.
of thing with like a V hole that I could use my arms and use a paddle and really get some momentum. But
Okay.
yeah, people can watch it.
That's crazy. So there was a crew, and they probably had all the gear that they needed and food and all that stuff, and they were just trying to keep up
Oh
with
yeah.
you, basically.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. Like when we
That's
would
cool.
hunker down for the night, they'd give you a camera and say, film yourself. We're gonna go, a mile or two this way and do our thing. And you're like, all right, well, this is
Yeah.
this is it.
Cool, man.
But it was
Very
good,
cool.
good
I,
adventure.
okay. Got a last question before we go to the next story. Was this more
Yeah.
difficult, or was Alone more difficult for you? Or were they both
Um,
cakewalks, I guess, is another option.
yeah, I think Alone was difficult because I got sick, and that really kind of did me in. And you know, unfortunately, I didn't film a lot of my sickness. And so I shot a muskrat with my bow, ate the muskrat, but it wasn't the muskrat that got me sick. It was a lot of the berries that animals had been peeing on and defecating on. And I got a form of dysentery, kind of similar to like a Gerardia,
Okay.
Cryptosporidium. And it just brought me down quick. But I've been sick in the woods and in the bush so many times that I know there's different plants and different things that can kind of help you out. And at this time, it was just I couldn't find anything, and it just kept going downhill and downhill.
Okay.
But um, they're all unique. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
I
imagine.
enjoyed Alone.
I bet.
Yeah,
I bet. Cool. Okay. Next question, or not next question, but next story. What else do you got for us,
yeah.
Donnie? You kind of overwhelmed me with that one, but we'll keep going.
No worries. So this past year, I took a nice sized mule deer, and most of my hunting is with a primitive bow. I mean, even in Colorado, you can hunt with a primitive bow. You got to have your double edges with a 1 inch base, some sort of steel kind of broadhead. So most of my arrows, that is about as primitive as I can get them, still meeting state regs for
Okay.
archery. And this year, I was trying to transition into the idea of saying, all right, you need more meat. You got two teenage sons. You eat a lot of meat. You need some more meat. So let's go out there and let's do a rifle hunt, but let's take away all of the advantages that you can have in a rifle hunt. Meaning, no food. I'm not a food guy when it comes to that. Minimal clothing, like you're not bringing a lot of packs and supplies. You're bringing the bare bones stuff. You're going to give yourself. I brought 5 rounds, and I was thinking of bringing more, just the idea, just to make sure everything is down if that's the case. But I was like, 5 rounds, you know what you're doing. And I wasn't going to take a shot that was over 100 yards out. I
Okay.
just kind of like to give myself a little bit of a challenge to make sure that I'm enjoying this hunt for everything that it is.
Yeah.
So so I was shooting a 7 mag rifle, and it's a great rifle for elk, mule deer, whatever the case may be. And I went out to unit. This was 51 along the front side, and I'd spent a lot of time in this unit. There's a lot of caves out there, and I was sleeping in those. And that very first day, we got a bunch of snow. And like most hunters, when it's mule deer season or even elk season, that snow is a good indicator of recent habits through track, through ground spore, you name it.
Yeah.
It gives you an opportunity to kind of learn a quick history of that area. So some snow fell, and I'm cutting tracks left and right over all these different areas. And I couldn't pick up any tracks. Lots of fox, a couple mountain yotes, some pine marten, things to that extent.
Okay.
But I wasn't finding any mule deer. And Unit 51 is kind of a unique unit. So it's Douglas County, Colorado, up to like Sedalia, and then there's a small chunk of it that sticks out towards West Creek, Colorado. And if anybody knows anything about West Creek, Colorado, is that probably about 7 or 8 years ago, there was a fire that swept through there.
Mm-hmm.
And I love hunting burn scars. Burn scars, in my personal opinion, if you've got a unit where you can get on a burn scar, there's a lot of fresh growth. It's relatively young. You've got good visibility
Yep.
all around you. You'll find these clumps of trees and these areas where animals could bed down that are somewhat isolated. So you almost reduce a lot of that kind of foliage that could get in your way, and you got good line of sight. So I spent a couple days, 2 days up in the mountains, and then I was like, you know what, let's go down to that burn scar. So I headed west from like Rampart Range Road and went to just behind West Creek. And I had spent some time out in West Creek prior to that fire kicking off, and I helped a gentleman out there trap a bunch of coyotes that were tearing up his rabbits and his chickens. So I had a little bit of ground truth familiarity with it. But what I needed to do was get out and scout it because I hadn't scouted that area. So while I'm hunting, I just kind of said, all right, leave your rifle. One day, you just got to get eyes on some animals. And where I was situationally, if you think about a north to south running hard ridge, and a hard ridge is something where it's kind of comes from a bowl and then sweeps up high and hard, and it's almost like the spine on the back of like a dinosaur or like certain sort of reptiles.
Yeah.
And hunting a spine like that, especially a north-south running spine, gives you a lot of advantages. And those advantages are, one, you can play the sun, and two, kind of in those burn scars, you have a pretty consistent wind coming from west to east.
Okay.
So I knew I was south of that spine. I had to make my way north of it and then jump on the other side of the spine and get an opportunity to do some glassing, to just get eyes on and see what I could come across. So I spent one whole day doing that, woke up super early in the morning because as soon as you cross that plane, right? So if the spine's running north, south, south, north, I'm going to have to walk in front of it. I can't necessarily walk behind it because eventually I was encroaching onto some private property. So I'm like, I'm going to have to punch out at 3:30 in the morning, shoot out there, get to the far side of it, jump across that spine, and then when all those animals start moving, that 4:30, 5 o'clock, waiting for that sun to come up, I can use that spine as a method of masking to see where these populations are, where they're bedding out of, where they're moving throughout the day, where they're feeding, and I can use that knowledge to ultimately see what animals present themselves. So I did that for that third day, moved through that whole spine, saw lots of does, saw lots of little yearlings, saw a couple spikes, and then every once in a while I'd see like a nice big buck kind of chasing down a couple does, but they were all on the run, all on the foot. So I'm thinking something's spooking them. It's still the rut, tail end of the rut. Are these older guys that are kind of trying to chase down these ladies? But I'm like, for me, it doesn't matter. My tag was an antlered mule deer. And so I spent the day kind of looking and looking, and I didn't see anything that would really meet the criteria. It met my criteria as kind of just meat in the freezer. And
Yeah.
like I always say, you can't eat antlers, but I use the antlers for flint knapping tools. So I'm like, all right, you're going to repeat the same action tomorrow, and you're going to bring your rifle, and you're going to get out there, and you're going to ultimately see better. You'll have your scope the whole 9 yards. So I did that same exact thing, but in my process, I really paid close attention to where I was walking and exactly where I was going. More importantly, the wind. The wind was hard. It was blowing on my left side as I was walking north. And one of the things that I carry with me is a little wind gauge. I don't know why I didn't bring it. It's probably in my truck.
I
But
assume a
it's a little
primitive one and not just like a puffer bottle of baby
Yes,
powder. Okay.
exactly. Yeah, this one's actually from Africa, and I learned this from a tribe member out there that was considered a poacher, then released by the government because he's so good at hunting and tracking. The guy's between 70 and 80 years old. He's just a phenomenal hunter and tracker.
Yeah.
And when I spent some time out there, he gave me this wind gauge, and it's just this little plume of feathers. So when you're shooting your bow and you draw your bow, you always have that wind in consideration. More importantly, I don't have to pull anything out of my pack, do a little puffer. I can just
That's
kind of throw
cool.
my hand up
Yeah.
and situate my body and see where that wind is. So it's just a constant wind gauge because I'm worried about wind from me,
Yeah.
not from thee. Because if they're upwind, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so I have this wind gauge and I'm really paying close attention because sometimes in the mountains, wind will blow kind of that west to east, but it will hit a unique sort of terrain feature, like a
Mm-hmm.
mountain that's kind of in a bowl, and it will start to swirl it, and that becomes a problem. I didn't see or feel any of that wind the day before, and I was just making sure that I wasn't going to kind of experience it today or that day. So I get to my hard line and I jump across this ridge. Sun's coming up, right? So I always like the sun at my back, even though animals have phenomenal perception of sun and heat and wind and all these things. It still gives me my mental advantage where I think like, if you've ever been like overseas fighting terrorists, they always like to have the sun at their back. So if you got to turn and shoot at them, you got the sun in your eyes.
Yeah.
Kind of that same mentality. So I've got the sun at my back and I'm just working this ridge and I just start seeing 5 or 6 does and a couple young ones. And then, a spike or a fork kind of walking through. And I'm mentally in my head saying, all right, this is what you're out here for. You're out here for meat. You're out here for, meeting your limit. Let's get it done. So in that ridge, I had looked for different windows that would be a great kind of egress down. And the egress down is just as important as your walk out to where you're going, because that egress down is your point of exposure where you're not necessarily going to silhouette yourself, but you're going to use the terrain to mask your movement to get within kind of that ideal shot.
Yeah.
So I'd identified all my egress points, and I know my third egress point was my best point. So in my mind, I stay behind the ridge and I move to that third egress point and see what presents itself. And I did just that. So I knew that that population of does was going to make their way kind of down this draw. And there was some hard terrain at the kind of southern edge of this spine. And if I could get there, it was probably a great spot to take a shot. So I moved along this edge. And this is where the kid in me comes out because I could tell you there's probably 5 or 6 times where I'd walk right up to that edge and I'd kind of peek over. Yep, they're still there, and peek down. Every time I'm doing that, there's a possibility of exposure because animals watch ridges.
I love
They
it.
watch for yeah, everything watches for silhouettes.
Yeah.
But
Just
I'm
trying
like,
to stay
I
alive.
just exactly, So I make my way down to that egress point, and as soon as I kind of round this kind of like rocky sort of ledge, there are 4 or 5 just bucks just kind of waiting, just some dudes hanging out. And I'm like, holy cow, okay, this is where you want to be, but I was still out of my range, and I don't have a lot of tools out there with me to kind of. So I'm doing that range estimation, the 100 football yard. That's kind of
Yeah.
my go-to.
Quick question there. I know
And
you said you
yeah,
wanted to shoot within 100 yards. I assume you're
yeah,
proficient outside of 100, but in this case, you
oh
just
yeah.
weren't at the spot that you felt was sporting enough for you to do what you wanted to do, right? Imagine this. You're deep in the wilderness. The sun is rising, casting golden light over rugged terrain. Your heart races as you navigate through the backcountry, knowing the perfect shot could come at any moment. This is where memories are made and stories are born. Ultralight rifles are often seen as Mountain West guns, but the Ridgeline FFT from Christensen Arms breaks that mold. This stellar, lightweight rifle is your perfect companion, whether you're in the backcountry or box blind, ensuring you never have to switch between your builds. With its aero-grade carbon fiber barrel and stock, the Ridgeline FFT is incredibly lightweight, yet powerful. Thanks to its innovative side baffle brake, it reduces recoil even on a 5-pound gun shooting magnum calibers. It's like black magic. As a sub-MOA tack driver made in America, the Ridgeline FFT is for those who seek the thrill of the hunt and the joy of storytelling. Picture yourself returning to camp, Ridgeline FFT in hand, ready to share the day's adventures. Head to your local shop, pick one up. You've got to feel this rifle to believe it. Let the Ridgeline FFT be part of your hunting stories and the legacy you pass down.
Correct. I think
Okay.
I was probably like right around like 300 yards at that point, which
Okay.
which is still a fine shot. But I think for me, always hunting with that primitive bow, I like that, just that little, because with a primitive bow to get on those mule deer,
Yeah.
I mean, 12 yards is like most ideal. It's a hard stock, but it's juice is worth the squeeze, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So I hit that 30 grass, and as I'm coming through, a little bit of rocks, they get a little bit of head turnings towards me. They're watching, I freeze, and they're like, this guy's obviously, and I've got blaze orange on in my vest, and it's still in my mind. I'm like, they can see me. And I know there's that mentality of like the whole blaze orange, um, but they kind of start to move over and they kind of jump to the other side of this little finger because it's kind of multiple fingers going down. I'm like, that's perfect. Wind's still in my favor. Now I can push a little bit harder, a little bit quieter, and I can get to that next finger, that little ridge, and I can see where I'm at. Make my way down, get to that ridge. There's small little pockets of snow, and I think when I hunt, it's kind of like a rock hopping sort of thing. Less sound, less movements. Snow's a crunch, leaves are a crunch.
Yep.
Burn scar, you got open terrain, but they also have that visibility. I get to that top of that ridge, and those 3 or 4 bucks were kind of just down below, starting to make their way up there, up that other side of that ridge. At that point, I knew I was in with that within that 100 yards, and I kind of just got myself in like a good like high kneeling position. Gave that like one of those for them to all kind of stop,
Yeah.
turn, and then took this nice buck. And I mean, with the 7 mag within 100 yards, he went down like instantly. Um, I mean, yeah, I mean, it was a lot of firepower, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's what you got. The rest took off, and at that point, you know, waited my time, waited for him to finish out. I already knew he was finished out. Walked over there and really started to process him out. And part of that disadvantage I wanted to create for myself, because creating hard opportunities always kind of gives you a different reward. Is I had some stone knives that I was going to gut and process it, and when I shoot a deer, everything's coming back, and that is intestines, that is stomach, that's heart, liver, lungs, the hide. I mean, I've got a bucket of legs over there full of sinew. Like everything on that thing is a resource. And I've got a small little pack. I mean, Kafaro sent me a nice pack after they heard about this story. They're like, we need to help you out. I'm like, oh my God, I feel so embarrassed. They're
Yeah.
like, no, just please. This is our gift. I'm like, okay. So I had this small little pack, and
How far
I
back
just
are
got
you
busy.
when you shot this?
6 miles.
Whew,
6 miles.
okay.
Yeah,
And you're bringing
six
everything out.
miles.
Okay.
Yeah, 6 miles, 3 trips to pack it all out. The only thing that really didn't come with me was a small chunk of the large intestine, all the stomach contents, and then a big chunk of the lungs where I wound up shooting the muley.
Yeah.
But so take it all apart, and part of my process when I'm taking an animal apart is its hide is the cleanest thing out there.
Yeah.
So I take that hide off, totally kind of pin it out onto the ground, and that's where I start pulling out my quarters, the back strap, the hearts, all my consumables that I'm looking to eat, neck meat, the whole 9 yards, and the head is still attached to that. And I wrap all that up, and well, I kind of first off, like most hunters, you're like, I think I could carry this thing out, and there was no way I was able to carry this guy. I mean, I tried like every combat drag. I tried splitting legs and shoving them through to create a backpack. I was just too tired and so low on fuel that it was just,
Yeah.
it was no go. But I was thinking to myself, all right, so you know how far you got to walk back in, walk back out. You're going to have to grab everything and anything. So it's going to take you some time. Just get it done. So took a couple quarters, took the heart liver, did my first trek out, walked back out, did that 3 times over 6 miles with a little bit of a
Six each
jog.
way, so 12 miles per
Yeah,
trip.
six.
Jeez. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a lot. I'm
Yeah.
going to be honest with you. It was one of those things where it took pretty much all day. But the beautiful thing was most of it was kind of gradual terrain leading up to where my actual truck was, and then it was easy to actually get back down.
Okay.
Like when you have that good line of sight, like you can find that most optimal. I'm not really dodging in trees. It was just kind of like in, and then it was kind of out.
Yeah.
And 6 miles, I could be exaggerating. I would say 6 miles. It was
No,
probably
it
just
was
under
10
six
miles
miles.
each way, man. Of course.
But it was worth it. I finished out the last haul, got back to my truck, and pretty much like just collapsed of just pure exhaustion. Just like this is exactly what I wanted, how I wanted it. But it was just top notch. And I think for me, being able to come home with everything. I mean, I have the hide sitting over here, the skull I boiled out myself. I sit there with dental picks, pick everything, butcher
Yeah.
all my own meat. Um, but for me at that time, just like in any sort of hunting, story and experience, it was about food for the family, resources for me to have that I continue to use. And just like most hunters, I get emotional in that process. Nobody likes to kill anything,
Yeah.
but like I appreciate everything that that animal has given me from the day that I started to work in and get those opportunities to hunt different animals to where it's at now. Like I've got some more of its backstrap I'm eating tonight for dinner.
Hell yeah.
It's those sort of things that really make for me the story even more beneficial, because yes, there is that hunt, but now the story continues with its hide and its bones and cracking its long leg bones to eat the raw marrow out of, and its antlers will become flint knapping tools and knives handles. So it's kind of a beautiful story, and
I love it.
I enjoy it, man.
I
Yeah,
love
right
it.
on.
I love all sorts of different things about that story, from um, just like your dedication to doing it your way. I love the details that you remember. I know a lot of guys that don't tell stories all that great, that are just like, yeah, I walked in and I shot this deer. Like every
Yeah.
single thing you can you remember, the topography, you remember the different points of access. Like I love
Oh
it when
yeah,
people
man.
can remember those kind of details.
Right on.
That was a great story, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was fun,
I
and
appreciate it.
I can feel the pack out the way that you
Oh
explained
man,
it.
I was smoked.
Yeah.
I had blood dreads, as I call them, because I got long hair.
That's,
They were just caked in blood and just dreaded up. And I think at the very end, I recorded a little video like last fall out, and I just called it honoring the hunt. Like, you got to work for it. You got to want it. Like, I don't have ATVs or horses
yeah.
or anything to that extent, but I'm strongly considering buying one. But
Yeah.
and then, I've got one other story, because that was in November, and about 9 days later, the gal that I'm marrying, Missy, this was her first elk hunt, and she had pulled an antlerless elk. I also had an antlerless elk tag, and but I said, hey, let's focus on getting you an animal. Let's focus on you getting out there hunting. And this was in Unit 58, right in front of Mount Antero, between Buena Vista and Salida.
Okay.
And it's kind of a populated unit. And I learned what onyx was. So I had never hunted with any of this stuff before in the past. I still like maps. I still like scouting. But she had onyx, and she's like, you should get onyx. And I was like, this is absolutely amazing. Like I
Yeah.
knew I had heard of it, but I never really knew its full capabilities.
Yeah.
So her and I, we loaded out in the truck, and she has, archery elk hunted before in the past, but this was going to be her first go around with a rifle. So we head up to the snowy area, kind of sitting right in front of Mount Antero, and I say, as soon as we get there, we're going to walk. And now that I know about Onyx, because I felt like I was cool, we can walk right up to these kind of private property lines. We won't infringe on those, but it's a good area because elk like to move in and out, and we're going to use that to our advantage. So we spent a day walking in the snow. And then while we were walking, we just noticed, and she kind of brought this to my attention, that there was a lot of cars moving along this kind of north-south road, and they were glassing down these fingers.
Okay.
And I think it was a really awesome experience for me and for her, because I was able to kind of give her a little bit of, there's hunting and then there's shooting. And I just explained to her, like, everybody has different capabilities and limitations, but for you to kind of continue to honor that hunt, you have to get out and walk, like glassing from a road in your truck with the heater on, looking for any sign or any sort of indication, and then getting out and putting on your stock. It's a way, it's not necessarily the way, but that's not how I hunt, and that's not how she wants to hunt. So we spent 2 days there, walking these different fingers. And unfortunately, when there's pine nuts on trees, I usually get distracted, start eating pine nuts, but it's also a food indicator. Didn't really see any track, didn't really see anything. And we jumped down onto the main road, and she found this little insert that connected to some BLM land. And it was a hard kind of road. And we drove up there and we parked. And I said, let's get out, let's walk. We're looking for ground spoor, elevated, midpoint, and then lower level ground spoor, anything that will give us indications that elk are in this area. We had binos this time, which was kind of cool. We had a laser rangefinder. We had Onyx. I'm like, this is amazing. But it was exciting to use those tools, because this was her hunt. And with my tag, I was like, focus is you. And after we had moved to that area, I said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to hunker down near the truck. It's kind of hot, and we're going to play kind of the north-south sides where animals are going to be sitting in snow, avoiding the heat. And we're going to kind of let it get to about maybe like 12, 1 o'clock when that sun is really shifted, and we're going to use that sun, that terrain kind of to our advantage. More importantly, I want to see the elk moving through that snow. It's a good contrast. As sure as anything, I'd say probably about 45 minutes after us sitting on this ridge, we see 4 or 5 elk. Now hers was antlerless, and we see it. It's about 800 yards. Actually, it was 836 yards because that time we had a laser, the rangefinder. But yeah, I'm not complaining about technology, but it was like, oh man, that's okay. That's pretty cool.
Like, that's
Um,
convenient.
yeah, totally convenient. Totally convenient. So I'm like, all right, let's put this stock on. The wind was blowing kind of from the southwest, so it was kind of blowing in our faces, and we had about 7 or 8 kind of draws and fingers we had to move between until I kind of spotted this one ridge that would give us an advantage. So as I was explaining to her, we want to avoid the roller coaster. We kind of want to do the bumper cars where you're kind of walking at the basis, which requires a little bit more energy expenditure. But I'm like, avoiding silhouettes is like a huge thing. So
Yeah.
we wind up
I'm
making
going to
our
use
way.
that,
We
by the
come to
way.
the,
I'm going to use the bumper
what's that?
cars analogy. Like, no roller coasters. We're going bumper cars.
That's it. That's it. So we get to the backside of this one kind of draw and this little finger. And we're at like, if I recall, I think it was like 130 yards. And this is, now keep in mind, this is her first elk. This is her first sort of like significant hunt in this sort of capacity. And I can see her emotional state slowly changing into, I'm about to take the life of this animal. I'm about to kind of experience something that not a lot of people get to experience. Those that choose to will find a way to do it, but this is something pretty sacred, something pretty honorable. And, she has a 7 mag, so she kind of takes a high knee. She's sitting in a little bit of chunk of snow, and there's 4 elk, 4 antlerless elk. One's laying down in the snow, and then there's one kind of standing on the high point of the ridge, and then 2 kind of off to the side. And I'm like, I want you to think which one is most advantageous to take. And she's like, I think the one laying down. I said, perfect. Animals that lay down, all that stuff is kind of compressed and kind of compartmentalized in a little bit tighter thoracic cavity. She takes her shot, kind of blows her back a little bit. The elk instantly kind of, it doesn't get up. I see a big spurt of blood as it comes out of its mouth, kind of kicks once or twice and lays down. And at that point, she came to tears, and I was kind of in a, tearful sort of spot because it was something we got to share
Yeah.
together. And she suddenly understood, and I think she kind of already knew the importance of hunting to me and for a lot of men and women out there, where one, that experience, and two, now what ultimately comes after, but all of the rewards, the food and the hides, like she was now part of that living history. Because everyone in this world, from 10,000 to 10 million, 3.3 million years ago, are hunters, and she now got to experience that in a different capacity, but now is going to really truly understand what it is. And we walked over to that elk, dragged it down the side. Thank God it was in snow, because what it was like a little button buck or a button bull.
Okay.
So it was still antlerless, but it was a young male. And I quickly got really nervous because as we pulled it down, and she kind of took a moment to put her hand on it. And anything I do in hunting, I always do like a last rites of food sort of ceremony where I take whatever it's eating and I place it in its mouth as its last meal. So it consumes, now we consume it. It's kind of that full circle, just to kind of show that appreciation. And as I was doing that, I kind of looked and I kind of saw these 2 kind of testicles that didn't quite fully drop, and I'm like, what the heck? And I didn't realize, from that distance, that
Yeah.
it was a young male. Felt up on his head, just 2 tiny little nubs, and which is a great thing. And it's also, a bad thing because you want, animals to kind of be able to grow and mature and do
Yeah.
their thing, still meeting all those legal limits. But it was a larger antleredless animal. So we started, and for, Missy, She's 105 pounds soaking wet. She got to work, you know, gutting the animal out and quartering it and just pulling everything off of this animal. And then our walk back to the truck, we did 2 trips, and it was just like around 2 miles, a mile and 3/4 was
Okay.
our total after we kind of walked in and out. But she was super excited for the experience, and the most beautiful part about it was once we actually came home, pulled out the fleshing beam and the butchering tables, and she cut that animal up into steaks and just roasts and stews, everything. I mean, we still have bones sitting in the freezer that we use for bone broth, and um, but everything. She got to experience the hunting that,
Yeah.
I've learned to really appreciate over the years. She kind of got to see it firsthand and really had um, an opportunity. And her brother JT runs Delta Waterfowl down in Texas, so she was absolutely sending him texts right off the bat, like, "Have you got an elk?" That sort of thing. But it was an amazing experience to share with her because we are getting married here in the future. She loves hunting. She's from Texas. But she's been able. I was appreciative of her willingness to kind of go the path that I like to choose, but still incorporating some of the conveniences of for achieving that level of success. But I'll tell you what, for 105 pounds, she packed out quarters, hearts, livers. I mean, she
Yeah.
put in the work,
I bet,
and
man.
it's post holing through some snow and getting where we need to go. But yeah, that night we kind of we stayed back out on that ridge. Kind of enjoyed the stars and the night, and then all the hard work that was going to come in the next couple days. But once we got back, I'd say within, oh God, I think within 3 days, hide was fleshed and stretched. All the meat was processed. Meat's always first, but got all the meat done. Then we do go to the hide, and then we boil out the skull, and I start making tools out of
That's awesome,
anything and
man.
anything that's left behind. But
That's
yeah, I think for us on the grand scheme, it was just it was a great bonding experience. So for all you husbands out there and all you ladies that are listening, go hunting with your partner, with
yeah.
your significant one, your lover, because it is a amazing thing to have that story of going out and truly like obtaining and then providing for your family. It's absolutely rewarding.
That's so cool, man. So she's hooked, I assume. So she's going every year.
Yeah, she's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
that's the funny part is like I've never done an elk camp, I've never done a mule deer camp. I've always been like a solo hunter. I've had a handful of people on standby that I could call if I needed help packing something out,
Yeah.
if I didn't think I could do it. But I've never been to an elk camp where there's coolers and four-wheelers and breakfast is being cooked. It's never been my one. I've never been invited. Two, it's never been my thing.
Never been
But
invited.
and there's nothing wrong with that, but I like the soloness of the hunting. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll go hog hunting with people in different capacities and waterfowl hunting, but when it comes to like elk or mule deer or mountain lion hunting or anything in that sort of capacity, I like that soloness. But this was really that first time I got to share it with somebody, and it's even better that I got to share it with someone that I love and going to wind up marrying.
That's awesome. That is so awesome.
Right on, man.
Donnie, I wish we had
Right
like
on.
6 hours because I feel like I could just keep hearing stories, man. I've got like a million
No
questions.
worries.
Okay.
Fire away.
Let's see. The tech.
Yeah.
Was it was just a nice convenience at the time, or are you going to adopt any of those things moving forward?
I think that's a great question. I still have the Onyx app on my phone.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
I know. Well, it's so. I'll tell you what. I think I'm going to use it for a lot of that scouting and a lot of that
Yeah.
initial planning, as
Yep.
far as understanding, private properties, BLM, National Forest, all that sort of stuff. And I think I will. I think I'll adopt it in certain ways and certain times. I think if I'm going with a primitive bow, I'll probably drop the Onyx, go back to my, moccasins, loincloth. I,
Okay.
that's just
All
that's
right.
just me. But I
Yeah.
mean, but I think if we're going in a different capacity somewhere else, I think Onyx is a great tool. I think it will help build the confidence of hunters in their uncertainties of terrain and understanding, how far they did walk or what are some of those factors in there.
Okay.
I'm all for it.
Okay, very cool. You mentioned cougars. You don't strike me as having a bunch of dogs. So do
Oh,
you just go cut tracks and just start following them,
I
or how
do.
do you? Okay,
Yeah. Snow. I wait for the snow. I wait for that. I call up just like, hey, whatever unit, 5 lines available. And I haven't had any success with that.
okay,
But there has been a handful of times. This is when I was kind of living in southern Colorado, where I just look for tracks, shooting across the road,
yeah,
prominent trails, and I've been able to see lions, definitely not within a shot, but it's cool, and I think I've learned so much from it. But when that fresh snow is hitting, that's the most opportune time. Cut those tracks, see where they're going, see if they're circling, because lions they breed year round, so
yeah,
there's always something there that they're going for food or that partner, and I think that's just, I mean, if you can get eyes on a line after cutting tracks and following it for an hour or two, that's rewarding. I mean, it's hunting within itself without the
yeah,
the benefits.
dude, I
But
believe it.
for some of my buddies that have taken lions, it's the way to do it.
Really? Okay, so do you go with your, like bow,
With a bow.
or you go with a bow? Okay,
Yeah,
you are a crazy man,
yeah,
Donnie.
yeah.
Okay,
Well, I, I, I think I mean, I've hunted with rifles and there's success. I feel like for me, my success rate goes up with a rifle. My success rate goes down, just like most archery hunters. It goes down. And then I think when you bring it down to a primitive bow, you have
yeah,
to employ a whole different set of different skills, knowledge, skills, and abilities
yeah,
to get that shot. And I've taken elk with a bow and mule deer with a bow and all sorts of things with a bow. But I mean, that's the challenge. This year I was looking for something a little bit different with Marissa. I was looking for a little bit something different with myself because it was about those resources. But years in the past, I mean, I tell you what,
yeah.
I love I love archery hunting, especially with a 6 foot primitive bow that draws at 65 to 70 pounds. You've made your arrows. That thing is dialed in, and there's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
compound hunting. Pick your poisons. That's just how I enjoy
Dude, good for you.
doing it. Yeah, it's
Good for
it's
you.
fun.
I can't imagine sneaking up to, you said like 10, 15 yards on a cougar
Yeah, close.
that's not treed with a stick
Yeah,
bow. Like, whew,
yeah.
okay. That got
I
me
haven't
fired up.
gotten there.
Yeah, you'll
I
get
would like to
there.
this
I'm rooting
March.
for you. I'm rooting for you.
This
I
March
got one more
will be
question,
the
but
goal.
yeah,
Yeah,
but I'm
fire
worried
away.
that it's gonna just like open up this crazy story that you have to tell.
All right.
You obviously have a very unique style of hunting. Like you're in the top 1% of like, I'm going to do it the way that our ancestors did it.
Yeah.
Have you ever been on a hunt where you're like, maybe I pushed it too far? Like, like maybe I
Like
shouldn't have
primitive
gone.
wise?
Just like
Yeah.
like you're like, man, I wish I had a better jacket, or I wish I,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
like whatever
All
the
of them.
circumstance with any of the things that you kind of dial back on. Has there
Yeah.
been, I'm sure, plenty of instances, and I don't know, is there one that stands out that you could share with us?
Yeah. I mean, all of them.
Yeah,
I'm always thinking, what
every
are you
time.
doing? God, you're an idiot. But one of the reasons I love, and I'll keep it short. Archery hunting, primitive bow, especially in Colorado, our bow season's typically around September, right? And the season that starts right before it that I love hunting is marmot, whistle pigs, way up in elevation, 12, 13,000 feet. Whistle pigs, the perfect thoracic cavity size of an elk. So it's great to get dialed in on those. They taste delicious.
Oh,
And
interesting.
for me, yeah, if you haven't marmot hunted, I'll tell you what,
Never even thought about it.
oh man, it starts August 10th, typically 9th, 10th, 11th, and then ends the end of October when the mountains start getting heavy snow. That's usually when they den up. But it starts. Now during that season, you're getting dialed in on marmot and you're way up in elevation, so you're really pushing yourself. But I like to have the marmot hunt overlap with that kind of fall time turkey and then into that elk season because it is opportunities for meals, especially the marmot. And there's been countless times where I've been, it's archery season, mule deer, elk, whatever that case may be. And I'm should be hunting for those, but I'm hunting for marmot because I want an aspect of food. A marmot looks like a big groundhog, but they're
Yeah,
clean eaters. They eat a lot of moss and flowers and grasses. So they're not really digging in the dirt, eating up worms and grubs and crickets and stuff. It's higher elevation. So where I kick myself is like, you need to start bringing some supplementals where you can focus more on the mule deer, elk hunt and not focus on getting a marmot that you're going to burn 8,000 calories trying to get, shoot it, cook it,
Yeah.
get maybe 1,500 calories, and then you're kind of back at square one. So
Yeah.
that sort of thing, having some of those modern things, just being able to take a form of fuel, and that other fuel comes in the form of fishing. But if you're trying to hunt meals while you're trying to hunt your primary target, eventually hunting all of those meals, catching fish, marmot, squirrels, whatever, that eventually becomes your priority, and you're missing out on your opportunities
Yeah.
to hunt. So supplemental food, and then I'm a big fan, especially, August into September, the mountains are still beautiful. It's
Yeah.
still warm in my
Gorgeous.
opinion. So it's absolutely great, but just bringing some amenities to aid in your sleep instead of sleeping in like a big leaf bed, or just having a wool blanket, or, why not, bring a sleeping bag? I mean, no one's going to judge you. It's just one of those things where,
Just a little comfort.
yeah,
Come on, Donnie. It's
yeah.
okay.
And you wonder why I've never been invited to an elk camp,
Yeah, right. They're like, why doesn't
but
Donnie bring a tent or a sleeping bag? He's just
I
sleeping
know, I
in the
know.
yard.
I know it's that thing, but I think, I'm 45. Maybe as time progresses, and maybe I'll, incorporate a lot more of those amenities with Marissa, Missy. This go around, I had some of those modern amenities, and I could see why there is a draw and the advantages they provide, successes as well as failures. But
Yeah.
um, I'm gonna continue doing what I'm doing. I mean, putting our tags in is right around the corner
Yep.
in my personal mind. Um, so, I mean, this year, we've already decided we're both doing archery now. She can't draw fully on a primitive bow. So she shoots a compound bow. So she's still working up to be able to draw on a primitive bow, something around that 50 plus, still getting within a good yardage. I mean, she can meet all the state regs, but she really wants to hunt with that primitive bow. And I'm like, well, let's just work your compound until we can get where you
Yeah.
need to go. But she puts in the arrows without a doubt.
That's
But
awesome.
this year we'll wind up putting in our archery tags, and we'll roll right from marmot to, turkey, and then right into that elk. But I will have some refuel meals, because there's a thing called a harvest right. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's a commercial freeze dryer where you can get one at home.
Okay.
So you can take all of your meals that you make a large portion of it, you have some leftovers, you can actually freeze dry it and turn it into your peak refuels
I've
or your
heard of people
mountain
doing that.
meals.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, it's I learned about it from a guy named Sean Curtis up in Wyoming. He's a phenomenal hunter, just, and I kept seeing him eating. He's like, I'm having elk, like fajitas, and I'm like, it's June, like what the heck? Why do you still have some, And he's kind of going over how he did it. So he kind of got me interested, and Missy got interested. So now we have a lot of those meals that don't cost you $15 a pop, but you can make your own sort of stuff. So incorporating meals, incorporating some sleeping gear, and I don't know, maybe I'll keep Onyx on the phone for a little while
All
longer.
right, all right, all right. Well, I was just curious, man. Don't change because of me. I just
No, no,
I
you're
love
good.
what you do, man. I've always
I
been
appreciate it.
impressed. I'm running out of time here, but
Yeah, no
I
worries.
want to have you back on again sometime soon, Donnie. In fact,
Absolutely.
I'm thinking about getting a group of guys locally to do something in person. So
Let's do it.
yeah, I'll get you involved with that. But let's do this. Let's wrap this up. Why don't you
Yeah.
tell the folks where they can find you if you want them to find you? If not, you can just run off without your sleeping bag into the
Right on.
mountains. It's up to you.
Like I tell most people, you can find me in the mountains or in the woods, somewhere like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, on most of the social media, it's just Donnie Dust, DonnyDust. On my YouTube, where I go over a lot of primitive skills and survival sort of stuff, it's Donnie Dust Paleo Tracks. All my books, all the things that I make and different things that I sell, all you have to do is go to DonnieDust.com, and that is really your hub for anything you want to learn, or even just getting in contact with me. And I do want to stress to folks that I respond personally.
Yeah.
I don't have a team of people. It's just me. So if you send an email, you're getting me. And more importantly, if you leave comments in any videos or anything at that point, I try to personally extend some of my time to sharing with you. I don't like the mentality of posting and ghosting. That is not how you build community. And for me, it is about reaching out to people, connecting, making new, friends and relationships.
Hell
And
yeah.
so, yeah, don't be a stranger. Reach out. I'm happy to answer questions, and you know, shoot the shit, so to speak.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, Donnie, thank
Right
you
on.
so much, man. You've always been like my pie in the sky dream of like where I want to get to. So it's super cool to get to meet you, man.
No.
As a
I
newer
appreciate it.
hunter,
Thank you,
like you
Michael.
see guys like yourself, and it's just like, oh my gosh, I wish. So
No
thank
worries.
you, Donnie.
Well, you do you, man. I mean, that's the easiest thing to be. Just keep rocking and rolling. I have a feeling we're going to wind up getting together sooner than later, knowing that we live less than 10 minutes apart. And we'll get out there. We'll see what we can come up with, and we'll get some meat in the freezer. That's what it's about.
Hell yeah. I'll have you over. So I shot a moose this year, so I'll have you over and we'll cook up some moose.
Oh, shit.
Yes,
This
sir.
should be what? Oh, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, I actually want to talk to you
man.
about bone broth because I got a bag of bones in my freezer that I have no idea what to do.
Yeah, man.
So we'll talk about that some other time. But Donnie, again, thank you, sir. I appreciate
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. Everyone listening, thanks for your time. See you out there.
Perfect. All right, folks, that's it. Another couple stories in the books. Again, I want to thank Donnie, of course, for coming on the podcast. It was super exciting to hear that he's a listener, but just to chat with the guy because he does such interesting stuff. Again, if you aren't following him, give him a follow. All the links you need are in the show notes, his YouTube, some of his socials. I immediately after recording this went and watched that eel story on First Man Out, and it was epic. So thank you, Donnie, for coming on the podcast. I really do appreciate it. To you listeners, thank you guys for tuning in. Please give Donnie a follow. Beyond that, guys, share us with one person today, and also give us a review on whatever you're listening on. And now, get out there and make some stories of your own. Thank you.